Hello there, my name's Peter Cook and I'm here to talk about my latest book, Reboot Britain, Strategies to Rejoin the EU and of course the art and practice of Brexorcism. I used to be a scientist. I've worked in life-saving drugs such as human insulin, the first HIV/AIDS drug. I worked in academia for many years teaching MBAs to people of many persuasions, and I'm a musician, so I'm a strange blend of scientist, business academic and musician. I've written 12 books on business and a couple of books on Brexit, and I've spent my entire life since 2016 trying to undo the disaster in slow motion called Brexit. So that's me in a nutshell. Now, where have we got to with Brexit in 2022? The state of the Brexit nation. Brexit's broke, we know that, but the nation doesn't quite realise yet. It's beginning to realise. But unfortunately, Brexit apathy is at an all-time high amongst Remainers and Brexiteers. People are sick of it, and Boris capitalised upon that in 2019 to win an election, not because he had anything good to offer, but because people were sick of Brexit. It's a long-term problem, so it's not going away. We mustn't also let Britain forget about Brexit. The Tories in particular are trying to airbrush the word out of existence, and the other parties are looking away. That's no good. Because the longer this goes on, the ability to assign causation or correlation to people's lived experience and Brexit will become harder and harder. So we must keep Brexit on the agenda, and this is what the book helps you do actually. We can join anew, but it won't be easy. And it won't happen just by waiting for politicians to do the right thing. We must act. Everyone must act. And this is what I do on a weekly basis with our Reboot Britain meetings. You can find all the details in the YouTube video of those. I believe that part-time effort is necessary, but it's never been sufficient because people only give that discretionary effort. That we can only give that if we have a job or we're busy or what have you. So I work full-time on this these days, and that's why I write books and do other things, make videos, music and the whole thing on the street, off the street, on social media, at night, day, 24/7. I really invite you to join Reboot Britain to find out more about that and support us in some way. But you can support us by buying the book actually. Best to buy it from me because Amazon don't take all the money that way. So just get in touch with me and I'll send you a copy. You can get it on Amazon and some other places. The Rejoin movement, I have to say, the reason we lost is we didn't have great leadership, we didn't have great strategy, we didn't have focus, and we didn't have enough power. So we do need more of all of those things. I still think we're fragmented, unfortunately. We were united around August 2019 before the election happens, but there are so many protagonists and every protagonist has a different view and diagnosis of how we should end Brexit or deal with it, that unfortunately we're not all joined together. So we do need leadership. And I think I provide that actually, and we provide that at the meetings. What then are the strategies that we pursue at our weekly meetings? We're after four targets. We're after the politicians, we're after the mainstream media, we're after social media, and we're after individuals and groups in cafes, bars, and this is what the book is mostly about. We try to break the parliamentary paralysis that gave us Brexit on all sides, not party political, because people looking away is just as bad as people promoting Brexit. So we act where we can to break open that parliamentary paralysis. Where we can, we take back control of mainstream media. It'd be nice to buy it. So if anyone's got a few billion out there to buy Rupert Murdoch, but I don't think that we are able to do that. So the best we can do is increase our footprint in those areas. And some of our people that we work with do that very effectively. I've done a bit of it myself. And the book shows you how to do that actually effectively. Improve our reach into social media. We have amplifier groups all over social media which you're welcome to join. And we need to change minds one by one, slowly, gently, with patience, humility and, well, a lot of time through Brexorcisms. And this is really where the book comes in. It shows you how to handle those difficult conversations with people who perhaps you've given up on, but their minds are changing slowly. And now is the time to re-engage with them. And we perhaps need to re-engage with them at a higher level than we have done by shouting at them and saying they're wrong. At the same time, we need people who will cultivate relationships with the EU such to prepare the way, such that should we be able to join again, that the ground is ready and fertile for that to happen. So the book discusses strategy to join again, to join anew. Either via normal parliamentary business, perhaps Brexit carnage becomes difficult such that people decide it's better to perhaps stay in the single market, or perhaps that becomes an ambition. It is what Lord Adonis talks about in the European movement under the heading logical incrementalism. I think there are some problems with that, because if we solve the problems of business by joining the single market and customs union, for example, then those people won't be interested in the rights of 67 million people. So the all or nothing strategy is to join anew, and the bit by bit approach, diminishes the pool of people that are interested in, getting rid of Brexit. The other thing about logical incrementalism is it feels very much like cakeism, which is how we got into this mess. We want more cake, really, by having all the benefits but none of the responsibilities. So I'm not sure whether the EU would want to have us back in the single market without the four freedoms, for example. But I'm open to discussion on that. Of course, Brexit may become such an appalling mess, which is happening already, that it might become an election issue for parties who are currently looking away or saying we've got to make Brexit work. So never say never. It could be that the parties decide that it's worth votes, and therefore in 2024 or whenever it becomes an electioneering issue. Hell's bells, we could have another referendum. If we did, we, logically speaking as a scientist, we deserve to have it exactly on the same terms as the one we had. Straight in or out, 52, 48, that sort of thing. But I bet we won't be allowed to if we have that. It'll have to be 66%. And an 8% swing is really hard to do, which is exactly why we need this book, because we need to work one by one on people, particularly the head people in groups and social groups, to persuade them that Brexit's a bit of a mess, because that's a huge swing to have in a referendum. And of course we are reaching the point where people, I'm not one of them, might feel so fed up with the cost of living and all the other things that they're getting that they might turn to civil unrest, riots and the general meltdown of democracy. Who knows what follows that? I'm not a fan of it, I'm just saying it may happen. So all of these things could happen and could provide breakpoints that give us an opportunity to join anew. However, we will not join anew unless certain preconditions are met, and here's just some of them. The book discusses others. We need to remove the Brexit culture carriers from power. I mean the Moggs, the Steve Bakers, and all of those people that wield power in the Conservative Party and of course in other parties, not just the Conservatives. We need to have a cultural realignment of the English exceptionalism that gave us our Brexit vote. This cakeism, we are better than everyone else, led to us always objecting to EU regulations or crafting them, in fact, to our own ends. So we need to have a healthy dose of humble pie rather than more cake, really. We need to mass Brexorcise the UK population, which I'm coming to with the book, really. That's what its core is about. And of course, we need to have the EU accept that we're serious and are truly sorry about wasting their time, money and resources, because I wouldn't let us back right now. But again, everything can change, everything is negotiable. So we are at a point where a lot of people think there's nothing we can do, but in fact that's what I call learned helplessness in the book. We can. Some of the things we discuss in the book and some of the things we actually do during our Reboot meetings and what follows them is we act on the streets to change minds about Brexit in terms of groups. We have just worked on Royal Tunbridge Wells, which is no longer blue, and we helped to remove 10 Conservative MPs in that area. The other thing we try and do is develop a cadre of what I call Brexorcists. Your head doesn't have to spin round like in the film. It's a much more subtle process. But we need a cadre of people who can go out and work on these people. Not the hardcore ones, but the ones that are starting to doubt whether Brexit really was the answer to a maiden's prayer. And we do naughty things as well from time to time. We were responsible for the thing which was called Operation Pisspot, which was parodied on Have I Got News For You? I'm going to put the video link in here somewhere so you can have a look at that.
We mentioned Brexit at the top of the question. Why have signs in Kent been damaged this week?
Are they villages twinned with French villages, or?
Signs leading into the county have had a bit of a facelift, changing from Garden of England to Toilet of England. They've been put there by anti-Brexit campaigners who say they're concerned by the possibility of 7,000 trucks gridlocked in Kent. But don't worry, the government is on top of it. No one's even going to be able to get there because it's all in Tier 3. According to Kent Online, the group referred to it as Operation Pisspot. But Ian, that's your area, isn't it?
Yeah, no, my garden is now, I've put a huge number of portaloos in. I've got about 50 in, and I've got a huge sign saying, "Come in, it's £1 a piss." That's not a joke. It's an advert.
And finally, who'd like to see a squirrel drunk on fermented pears?
The other thing that the book discusses, which has opened up the conversation anew, sadly, is the Russia-Ukraine war. However terrible it is, my conversations on the streets with people that are Brexiteers, whereas they didn't want to believe that their sovereignty was affected, they get very prickly if you start discussing that. They do like the idea that Vladimir Putin is doing it from afar to us, that we're under control of a foreign body. So actually, this has opened up the conversation again about, you can then explain to people how he's funded, Brexit, helped to fund that, went in on the Western Front through Britain, and now, of course, he's closing the gap by going on the Eastern Front, very sadly. So the vast majority of the book concerns what I call the gentle art of Brexorcism. It isn't always gentle, by the way, but usually it's fine. And, to do that, you have to be other-centric, think inside the mind of the people you're trying to influence and persuade, rather than thinking, well, I'll proselytise and tell them what they should be thinking. There's a role for telling people, but most of a Brexorcism is listening and asking clever questions and doing a lot of clever interventions and thinking inside their space. And I've got a picture of the Brexit brain, not that there is a standard one, but here's some of the things that occupy the minds of people. I've spent thousands of hours in cafes and bars listening to them, and they say some strange things sometimes, like they voted for Brexit because they didn't like garlic, and we must act with grace and sort of just accept that that's the best they can do, even if you think inside it's crazy. Some of it is genuinely crazy, I think. And I coined the word Brexorcism and Brexorcist in the New European. And what I mean by a Brexorcism, it requires really high-level skills. We've all got loads of skills, but the book contains some seriously high-level skills to give you the ability to enter the minds of your clients or victims, depending on what you want to call them. You need a lot of patience, though, and some people admit to me that they don't have any patience with Brexiteers. You have to. They were duped. We've got to bring them back over the line somehow. We don't have to convert them to our point of view. We just have to get them to the point where they realise that they were duped. That's good enough for them to probably change their vote at a suitable time or do something about it. It needs the thing that counsellors and therapists understand to be UPR, unconditional positive regard, where you give grace to people even though you think that perhaps voting for Brexit because you didn't like garlic is the craziest thing you've ever heard. It's the best they can do. So you don't have to agree with these people, but you do have to give them credit for where they're coming from, as it were. And you need quite a bit of time, sometimes spread out over time. You can't always just think, well, I've got half an hour to go and do someone. Sometimes you need to creep up on them, not literally, of course, but you need to get them in cafe, have an initial conversation, get rapport with them, gradually then unwind them over time. So some of the best work I've done has taken months in little small doses rather than one sitting. And we can't hope to do it by shouting at people at marches. Shouting at people at Parliament has other functions. It's something else for media and the press, but it doesn't change anyone's mind because I shout my view, the other side shouts their view. There is no meeting of minds in that brief encounter. So the time is not sufficient, and of course you're not entering the mind of the other side to do it. So what is on offer in this book? Well, there's a heady cocktail of learning that I've acquired through 28 years of being a management consultant on a practical psychology called neurolinguistic programming, a lot about language and linguistic, a lot about sociology, about how people work in groups, and I guess almost anthropology. and a lot based on therapeutic approaches to change, based on thousands of hours of field work. There's also a bunch of stories in the book that illustrate how you do it. So it's not a theoretical book. It then shows you how you do it at the bus stop, the bar, the cafe, the casual encounter that you may have. Because these things can happen every day, all day. And I regularly find a subject to talk to most days of the week. And if you think that NLP is a dark art, if you've heard of it, you think, oh, it's dangerous. You need to know this, that Paul McKenna, the hypnotist, helped Vote Leave come up with the various phrases like take back control and what have you, using techniques based on NLP. I mean, musicians know this very well because you can't have a very long title of a song. It's got to be fairly short if it's a pop song. So, of course, what he's really good at is crystallising complex stuff down to nominalisations, as they call it in the language trade, but things that don't mean anything, like build back better, take back control, and things like that. But they sort of mean whatever other people think they mean. And that was the great skill. Love them or hate them, Nigel Farage, Paul McKenna, all these people, they're really clever at what they do. You may not like it, I don't like it, but we must better them using their own skills. So we must have catchphrases that stick in people's minds. We must have facts that support the catchphrases and be able to drill down so that we can get beyond those people that need data and facts. We can substantiate our bullshit with facts, because Vote Leave could never do that. Now, the therapeutic part of the book is a model based on work done by John Heron, which I have used for years in training with Metropolitan Police, Kent County Council, the NHS, and global companies actually. And it talks about two styles of intervention. One which are directive interventions, like prescribing, like a doctor, take these pills and you'll feel better. Do we always listen to the doctor? No, we don't actually. We go and check with another doctor. But, telling, basically, is one of the styles. Informing people, if you continue to do this, this will happen. Or confronting them, which in crude terms is explaining nicely why they're wrong. But you don't just say you're wrong. Sometimes you do. It depends how much rapport you have with someone. The second set of interventions are what Heron called non-directive. They take longer. They're much more subtle. They're a bit like what I consider the Columbo technique of supporting someone and saying, well, I realise that, you probably thought that garlic was, the awful thing in Brexit, but now as you think about it, is that all? Finding clever questions to sort of dislodge people's thinking, or catalysing them somehow by encouraging them to think differently, or catharsis, letting them get stuff off their chest. There is clearly a conflict between how quickly you can Brexorcise people and how effective it is. If you go around telling people you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you'll spend a little time on it. But you may not be that effective unless the recipient is willing to listen. So the real art of the thing is getting them ready to hear that they're wrong, or to tell themselves that they were wrong even better. So it's a bit like alcoholism, really. Until they're ready to say, I'm an alcoholic, you're not going to get very far. And the art of Brexorcism is getting them to that point, actually. And once you've got to that point, the work is easy. So there's loads of stories in the book that explain exactly how you do this. And I'm going to pick a couple off here. I spent an hour with a man at the edge of Kent, at the Swale, where the bridge to the Isle of Sheppey is, and he was celebrating Brexit. He was having a party at the 31st of January 2020, and he took great delight in talking to us for about an hour about he hoped that he would be able to land a £5 bass from the Swale because he was no longer shackled by EU regulations. I spent a lot of time explaining that I wasn't a fisherman, but I knew that fishermen wouldn't necessarily stop fishing if somebody didn't make rules. He denied that vigorously until I worked on it a little longer, and I said, well, the history of the world and things called moral hazard, it dictate that people will just keep fishing unless someone says don't fish for so many fish. So he gave in the end. But what crystallised it for him, I said, look, you've got Brexit now. You couldn't land the £5 bass. Can you land the bass now? And he grated his teeth for quite a while and realised that he couldn't. So his whole life sort of collapsed. And James O'Brien does this very well in a limited time on LBC, but generally he's trying to run a radio show and have the adverts in, so he often doesn't give people the time that they need for the pennies to drop. So, we don't have to get it inside the advert, so we do take longer. And there's the story of the garlic in the book, and the man who's... I often ask people, about their family and kids. Is Brexit going to be good for their children? But there's loads of stuff in the book about the sorts of questions you can ask and how you can sort of turn things to your advantage when they say, I don't give a shit about my children, because I've had that one. And there was one guy that he'd got 2 kids in their 30s. And I said, well, tell me about them, just to give him a bit of a break from lecturing him about Brexit. And he said, well, one of them's she can't get a job because nobody appreciates her skills. So I sort of... Inside I looked very curious, and outside I just went, oh yeah, I see. I thought, I don't know what he's talking about. And then I said, what about your son? He said, oh, he's getting a lot of racism. I said, oh really? And he was a white guy, sort of 70. He's getting a lot of racism from blacks, he went. I thought, well, tell me more. I said, how is that happening? And he said, well, he's in Parkhurst. And just to be clear, Parkhurst is a maximum security prison. You don't go to Parkhurst for a parking offence. So I stayed with the supporting mode. I said, that must be really hard, getting a lot of racism from blacks for GBH in Parkhurst or whatever it was he'd done. And inside I kind of thought, easy solution here if you don't want to be beaten up in prison. Don't commit crimes. But this is where the unconditional positive regard comes. If I'd have told him that, he'd have either punched me or he'd switched off. So it didn't seem terribly important to just acknowledge that life must be hard. And sometimes giving people a break in the midst of a session is really important. And I often go to tell me about your family. Once you've understood their sociology, you're much better placed to do the therapy. And it is therapy in many cases. We are messing around with people's identity and their beliefs. It's not the same as change management in business, where you either pay people more to do new behaviour or you sanction them and carrots and sticks. You can change people's behaviour quite easily at work by either giving them a reward or telling them off or sanctioning them. You can get people to do different things because people, generally speaking, if they go to work, it's just a simple exchange of money for effort. And if you say, I want a different effort and I'll give you more money, sometimes people will do it, or if you tell them off, they will do it as well. So maybe carrots and sticks do work in the world of change management at work, but we're talking about people who've got their beliefs wrapped up with the flag, the Queen, immigration, a series of woven beliefs, or what you might call crap, in their minds. It doesn't matter if it's crap, it's their crap and they believe in it. And we must enter their minds in order to Brexorcise them. Incredibly funny story in the book where I had a man that came round and really objected to the stickers I have on my dustbin, bollocks to Brexit. Turned out he was an ex-Metropolitan policeman, and he sent me a really, really nasty letter. Apologies for... I put it up here. It has some very bad language in it, and apologies if you're of a nervous disposition, but that's what came through my letterbox. It came to my wife, in fact, who was terrified. And then he started putting stuff in the garden, rubbish, over a period of weeks. And then he got some spray paint and started spray painting the front of the house. And then he came round with a knife one evening and started attacking the property with it. You might think that's rather unusual, but, that's what does happen where I live in Kent. I unfortunately got a camera, filmed him doing this, reported to the police, who were not remotely interested in it because of him being an ex-policeman. So I ended up taking him to court, or I nearly took him to court, because he caved in and paid me for a complete redecoration of the front of my house. Now that's unimportant, but what is important, I end up doing my own mediation with him and my own negotiation, taking a few leaves out of Michel Barnier's book. And the story of this negotiation is in the book, and it's, I have to say, comedy gold, because after he paid me £3,000, he told me that I was controlling his mind via my dustbin. So he still wouldn't admit that he'd done it, and he said he wasn't a policeman when we found out he was, and all kinds of stuff. But it was unimportant to get to the goal. So one of the things we talk about in the book is knowing what you really, really want. In NLP terms, we call that an outcome. So all I wanted to do was to get him to atone for his behaviour, and he won't come and do it again because it costs £3,000 every time he wants to spray paint my front now. So bring it on, I say. So here is the video of what I call knife crime, where he came round with a knife. I followed him home that evening, found his address, which I added safe distance, I have to say. People said to me, why don't you out Ken? His name's Ken, but I won't give his full name. And I said, well, they said, why don't you out him? And I go, oh, no. I said, well, he's very angry. He's been angry ever since he left the Metropolitan Police in 2018. He's a bit mad, and he lives 200 yards away. I said, so why would I want to do that? I just want him to atone for his behaviour. I'm never going to convert Ken, frankly, although he may think twice about Brexit now, I suspect. But if you ever need to negotiate with terrorists, this book is really good for that. At the back end of the book, there's a whole bunch of resources to support Brexorcisms, because people say, well, I don't know what to say when they say we need them more than we need us. We want more cake, and there's all these rapists coming to Tunbridge, which is what my sister told me, that she wanted Brexit because it would stop the rapists coming to Tunbridge from Berlin. 2 million of them, she said, and I said, is it really that many? So there's loads of resources to help you deal with these frequently asked questions and the unfrequently asked questions. So there's 170 Brexit freedoms. Never let it be said by anyone watching this that there are no Brexit freedoms. There's bags and bags and bags of sovereignty. You can't eat it, you can't live on it, and so on. It doesn't solve the cost of living crisis. But there's 170 Brexit freedoms in the book. Fantastic. You won't find much in any of them, unfortunately. They're a bit satirical. But there are 350 plus Brexit EU freedoms, written by Paul Cawthorne, who's an economist living on the border of Italy and Switzerland. A brilliant guy. He has data mined every single thing in the EU and our relationship that we lost. And there's 400 or so facts that you can use when you're in armed combat with your victims or your targets or your clients, whatever you want to call them. So that's a brilliant resource as well. So there it is, Reboot Britain, by changing minds on Europe and Brexit. We need to work on people one by one. It's not enough to wait for an election, because if we don't change these minds, we'll get the same thing happening next time when someone has an opportunity to express a viewpoint. So we need to get out there. We need an army of Brexorcists to get out there. In short, we need a better Britain and a better Europe for a better world. This is a global thing. Although Brexit's a national thing, the only things that are more important than Brexit are climate change and world war. They're global, but Brexit is the most important thing facing our children and their children, and we must break Brexit before Brexit breaks Britain. Thank you very much. I'm Peter Cook. Please find all the details in the YouTube description, with all the links to YouTube, to Facebook, Twitter, our crowdfunder, and you get the book from me or Amazon. I don't mind where you get it from, but just drop me a line, and the email will be in the description. You can just email me for a copy. Thank you very much.